For those who don't know, Tabletop Time actually started as a roleplay channel about 10 years ago. Relaunched 5 years ago and slowly morphed into what you know today, a minis channel. But we're going back to our roots, diving into the new D&D Starter set and seeing, is it worth the price tag? Is it any good? What have they changed from the previous edition? And should you grab it?
And we're also going to show off a little bit of our Magnuscape project that we're releasing really soon. It's a fold-outable magnetic tile set that you can do your D&D or any roleplay campaigns in.
We're also going to play one of the intro scenarios in this box and give it a little taster, see if it's worth its value. Did you actually look that?
Yeah, I regret it. It's Tabletop Time. So the previous D&D starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, is a successor to the Lost Mines of Fendelver campaign that's been run in the D&D starter set for many years. This update includes a new adventure, but the box itself only contains some character sheets, a brief starter set rulebook, a small campaign supplement, and one set of dice. In fact, the box itself is half full of cardboard padding.
Oh. Wow.
Filler packaging.
I am offended!
It's literally half the package.
Overall, there's very little in this box, and it only contains what you need to play a single, straightforward, one-off adventure with 4 regions to explore, some maps in the campaign, not separate, monster stat blocks, etc. But yeah, pretty much just what's in the campaign, as well as all the spells the characters have, etc. So while that first starter set was basic, the biggest annoyance that we pointed out was the box being half of nothing. So it'll be interesting to see what's in this. All right, so we're gonna take a look at all the components and kind of review what's in this box. Off the top, it is a lot more full. How much of it is useful though, is the question I kind of have. So yeah, we'll break all these up. We'll start having a look at them. We've got map booklets and the play guides. We've got all these tokens, sheets of tokens, these new class board things, which are very peculiar to me instead of character sheets. And all of these cards, we have so many cards. What are they for? Let's have a look.
Alright, it's time to talk about class boards. Not character sheets, class boards, which basically seems like a very gamified version of playing D&D. You know, it's just literally all the basics. Equipment, you've got the armor, goes on the armor slot, makes sense. And the various weapons, which are all accommodated for each of the characters. It tells you exactly what you need for each of them. That's cool, that's very simple. I like you get a short description twice on the class board telling you what your character shtick is all about. Fighter, master of all weapons and armor, rogue. So if you want to play an anti-hero who launches deadly strikes while avoiding harm through stealth, you sort of can immediately get an idea of what you're all about. You have a bunch of tokens, power tokens that use the various abilities throughout all the classes, sort of cover all, whether it's stamina for your physical martial classes, or the spell tokens are also the power tokens. That's interesting. As you level up, you flip the sheet, you've got the next level there, it goes up to 3. What I do like is that when you get to level 3, it's still double-sided, so you get a choice between the domains or subclasses that your class might otherwise encounter. Of course, spells, pretty important thing for any D&D fantasy world. These characters are all, as we said before and established, pre-prepared. So everything is already set out. You have a list of the spells you can take. I actually really approve of having cards to look up spells. Does anyone have the book free? You know, I want to double check this spell. Having the cards on you is fantastic. The only problem with that is that, of course, you only have all the cards for this starter set. And this is not nearly every spell in the game. Therefore, this doesn't have much use outside this starter set once again. Apart from that, it is extremely bare bones. It tells you exactly what you need to know for this campaign and nothing else. And while it is extremely hand-holding for some of the features, other areas it really doesn't explain that the fighter has, you know, for example, 2 weapons, but one's two-handed, therefore he can't hold something else, but you know, how to use the short bow. It doesn't really explain that there. And yet for the wizard, it is extremely explicit in that if you die while having a concentration spell up, the concentration ends because you have died. Thank you. But of course, the biggest difference here is this class board as opposed to a traditional character sheet. This is from the 2014 character sheet. But you can see that there's a lot more stuff there. And so while this is really easy to package and sort of compartmentalize as, you know, your first time playing, if you want to expand and progress from this little starter set, you're immediately going to be confronted with this big character sheet, which the game doesn't explain any of that to you. So you're going to be basically learning the game anyway, regardless of, you know, your experience with the starter set. And so there we have it. We have the class boards and sort of attached equipment cards and spells. They all sort of nicely come together to create a very simplified, gamified version of D&D, which is a really nice inlet for brand new people who have never touched a sort of RPG on paper before. Anyone else sort of sitting in, probably gonna irritate them a little bit. It is very bare bones. There's not much you can do. It really holds your hand and holds you back from doing anything special. But as an inlet, it's fine.
So a substantial amount of weight in this box is the cards. We have the small format cards and larger format cards. The larger format cards are all monster reference cards. And I have to say, as someone who owns the previous 5th edition monster reference cards, I quite like these. I really like the art forward nature. It's very clear what you're looking at, and it's really easy to get an idea of it. They are quite simplified and clean and easy to follow, and I think they're a really handy reference for DMs. The only real problem I would have with these is currently, as far as I'm aware, there is no D&D 2024 5e monster reference cards, which means that aside from the cards in this box, there's nothing else that matches this style. So that means you're gonna have a really incomplete set of monsters. I don't think this goes on to serve as a comprehensive, useful item outside of it. Like, they're still good outside of it, but it's an incomplete set, which for some people is going to be frustrating. It's going to be occasionally useful. But for the rest of the cards, for the DM side of things, we have these NPC cards, and they basically have a bit of art, which is cool because you can show your players. Then on the back, they have a few notes. So for example, this card references a monster card. If the players do decide to fight them for whatever reason, it tells you which one to use, which is cool. And it also just says a virtue or a couple of personality traits, as well as some rumors. I quite like the rumors on the bottom here. So if players randomly talk to an NPC you're not really prepared for, you can flick to this and say, oh, there's a couple of things this guy can say. Anyone can pledge to defend the keep. Talk to Andrella in the inner gatehouse if you'd like to join the keep's defenders. So it has a little bit of a gamified vibe, and it feels a lot like maybe Skyrim dialogue that these people will just have 1 or 2 lines to say. And finally, we have player action reference cards, and these are really useful, especially in combat. One of the most common things to happen in D&D, even if you've been playing for 5 years, is certain people will always just not know how to play. I've played with people in campaigns for literal years and they still don't know how to actually play D&D. In fact, I'm pretty sure Critical Role still has people on their team who maybe sometimes don't know how to play D&D. I think it's a personality type. It's fine, and these are useful because you can go, oh yeah, I can do a help action. So yeah, useful. I like these cards. Overall, in looking at the cards, they're quite well made, they're quite useful, but my feeling is they're very useful for the contents of this box. I don't feel like it's like an added value product that you're getting that you can use for future D&D adventures. So overall, useful reference cards, but really they're a supplemental product to this starter set. They're not something that stands alone in their own right.
So we're going to start off with the older D&D starter set, Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. And we're going to look at the rulebook first. So this is pretty much a condensed version of your player's handbook and your dungeon master's guide, which means that DMs and players will need to read this booklet inside and out. Everything in this booklet is pretty much copy and pasted from the original player's handbook, kind of just cutting away some of the fluff and making it really easy to understand. However, this is quite a bit to read, and I can see this getting kind of boring pretty fast. The introduction to this campaign has some really good DM tips and just sort of learning how to play Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. However, it does very much hold your hand throughout the entire experience. If you're someone who's completely new to role-playing in general and you've maybe never even heard of it, then maybe having that guidance is really helpful for you. But if you're someone that's probably a little bit more creative or you want to write your own stories, then maybe this might be a little bit too restrictive for you. So reading through the campaign book, combat happens really early on. And I consider combat to be its own beast. It's completely sort of separate from the D&D roleplay experience. So to throw your players straight into combat without doing ability checks or even learning how the dice are rolled, I think is kind of a bit nasty, and they could have been a little bit more gentle with this. I should mention that there are no maps in this set. It's only just these 2 booklets. So if you want to use maps, you're going to have to find a way to come up with your own, whether this is drawing them out or a whiteboard. Considering the price point for this product, I think it's pretty good value for money, even though it doesn't include a couple of things that could be added to create a more enriching experience. So now we can move on to the newest D&D starter set, Heroes of the Borderlands. The first thing that greets you when you open the box is this quick start guide, which is really useful to determine who needs to read what and what is available in the box as well. So we're going to start off with the play guide for this set, and I have to say right off the bat, this goes way more in depth. Visually, this guide is better laid out with some really beautiful color images and blocking out text really thoughtfully. So instead of just staring at a page full of text, you're able to absorb the information better. Something I did really love in this guide in particular was how ability checks were explained. This gives a good couple of pages explaining ability checks, why they're important and how to use them. But in the previous guide, it was literally a paragraph. Lastly, at the end of this, there's also a rules glossary as well, which is super important if you are DMing for the first time, because you're going to be using that probably quite a lot. So next up we have maps, and you get quite a few in this set, which is great because you got none in the other one. So let's have a little look at these. So these maps are printed in full color and have different sizing to them as well. However, it's worth mentioning that these maps only really work for the campaign that is in this book. Of course, you can reuse them if you wish, but you don't have the flexibility like you would making up your own maps, which is a great segue into today's sponsor.
This is Magnuscape, the first physical product from Tabletop Time, and it's one we're super excited about, solving a bunch of problems I have as a DM with RPG battle maps. Magnuscape boards are double-sided, with one side being fully magnetic, foldable, and transportable to make setting up, transporting, and playing your encounters as easy as possible. Maybe this encounter needs another tree right there, or another building. This set is called Travel and Taverns and has everything you need to create encounters along the road or encounters in towns to set up your favorite tavern that you come back to. Every surface is dry erase friendly, so you can take notes, set up initiative, or write down spell effects whenever you need. You don't have to worry about bumping the table and your tiles moving around. Every Magnuscape set includes 2 double-sided gaming boards. There are 4 sheets of magnets, 2 of them focused on buildings and 2 of them focused on props, as well as more sheets of themed reusable stickers added as stretch goals along the campaign. We also include 2 premium embroidered velvet bags to store all of your magnets once you've punched them out of their sheets. Whether or not you use their modularity for every session or set up a couple of them for your favorite locations you come back to and store them on your bookshelf, Magnuscape is perfect for you, and this is hopefully just the beginning. So head on over to GameFound and back the campaign. We've got a lot to look forward to, and if it does well, we'd like to make other themes. And we're also excited to be saying that we are going to be shipping from multiple regions. So whether you're USA, Europe, or Australia Pacific based, you'll be able to get yours with a much more reasonable shipping price than some of the crazy costs we're seeing with international shipping these days. I really hope you like our first product, Magnuscape.
So now we're moving on to the little bits and bobs that are also included in this starter set. First up, we have our combat tracker. So this is just a really useful way to learn how to do initiative. Again, this might not be applicable to everyone, and I feel like different DMs will track initiative in different ways, but just to have a little handy guide and throw it into the kit, I think is nice either way. Something else I found that was kind of really cool in this kit is these very specific campaign pieces of information, I suppose. There's a menu for the local tavern, as well as an armory with the prices on them as well. And I think these are just kind of fun. I do think this is setting up an expectation for your DM to do this themselves, which is a lot of work. And last up, we have our dice for this set. Now, there's a couple more in here than there was in the previous set, including 2 D20s, 4 D6s, and the rest of an RPG starter dice set. The inclusion of 2 D20s is very welcome, considering your DM is going to be using it literally necessarily all the time. However, I still find it kind of interesting they don't include more sets. Even just different colors would be really cool. These can't be that expensive to produce, but I'm glad that they included more dice either way versus the previous set. And the last thing we need to mention in this set is the actual campaign books. Now there's 3 of these that come in the starter set, and these are all played in conjunction with each other. The campaign included in this set is more of a sandbox style. They can be played individually, however, are set in the same world. This gives players way more freedom to explore this world rather than the previous set, which held your hand from point A to point B. As mentioned before, we're going to be playing this campaign with Dave as our DM and using everything that was included in this kit. So we can give you guys a full review on what it's like to play with this starter set.
Also contained in this box is some cardboard cutout sheets with punch tokens. Now, this is one of the ways to play, and it's one of the most common ways to play on like Roll20 and online platforms is to use 2-dimensional tokens. But in physical form, it's not something I've seen that often. It's a really simple way to use the map boards and battle boards because you can punch out your monsters and effectively have a representation of where they are on the battlefield, which is kind of useful. If you had a battle map, like say this one, which just happens to be from Magnuscape, our upcoming campaign, you can see how tokens will fit nicely in the battle grid and you can move them around. But beyond monster tokens, there's also gold tokens. Now, when it comes to gold tokens, I find this is something that very few people ultimately end up liking. And the reasons for that is Dungeons & Dragons has a currency system that inflates to an absurd point. And the idea of having your actual currency like it's a board game and meeting it out in sessions is very fun. And I understand that. I've enthusiastically been down that pipeline before. But if you're new to D&D, I think what's realistic is you'll find that managing your currency in this way it falls apart. Outside of your level 1 to 3, you'll rapidly have hundreds of gold pieces. You'll be dividing between platinum pieces, gold pieces, silver pieces, and copper pieces. And managing that in any way other than just writing it with a pencil on a character sheet, I really don't think you're going to use it practically.
The reality is like, oh, can I buy a magic weapon? Oh yeah, you have 6,000 gold.
Yeah. And the same goes for health point tokens and things like that. Look, again, tracking your hit points in 5-point increments is how much damage you've taken or how much damage a monster's taken. That will all seem really sensible in a starter set where you're playing a level 1, 2, or 3 character. But in D&D, your character's HP rapidly goes above 50, and usually for most of a campaign, it's going to be between 50 and about 150. So when you're talking about counting up little tokens when a monster does like 27 damage to you in a single hit, it's just going to be a headache, and it's usually much easier to use some kind of adjustable dial product or mostly using a pencil and paper. That's why we use pencil and paper so much. So again, I don't know, like these little power tokens, like it's all a much of a muchness. I don't think you'd use them very much. We've got some traps, some webbing, some terrain, and then we've got some player tokens. The ones I'm really into is definitely your tokens for your monsters and for your characters and for your terrain. All of that stuff allows you to actually play the game and better visualize combat, better visualize difficult terrain, and that is really valuable. The things for counting and tracking, I really think you're gonna play with them a little bit and you're not gonna use them, so I don't really rate them. It feels a bit like filler. But definitely stuff like this where you can mark the effects of a web or a spell and your character tokens are definitely worth having. I am not that fond of things like these. We have these treasure tokens. We also have little tokens that represent like sort of skeletons. They're okay for set dressing. But what I find is in a game that predominantly involves descriptions, things like investigation checks, putting like a big treasure chest token on the table in a particular space, I don't know, it's kind of gamifies things to a degree. It's all personal preference, but that level of gamification I think can take away from the mystique and allure of rolling for things and searching for things, because you're just like, I can see there is a treasure token on the table. Can my character find it? Roll perception. You fail. No, you can't see the token that you can see on the table. Like, it gets a bit meh. Anyway, that's the tokens. I think for all of the combat stuff, the relevant combat tokens and monster tokens is really useful for in this kit. The other tokens I think are just going to end up in the bin because I really don't see you outside of this starter set using them. Definitely feels like major board gamification of D&D, which is fine. Some of you are going to love it. That's fine. That's your own thing. You're wrong, but it's fine. That's a look at the tokens. Hopefully that gives you an idea of where you might use them. Overall, kind of the least important thing to dive in this set. It's your gameplay supplements. They're fine. But let's look at something that's a little bit more meaty. This is a special episode where we are exploring the new D&D 5th edition starter set.
I'm playing Glimdorf, the dwarf.
I'm playing Tak, the halfling cleric.
Jonglin.
Yes.
Jonglin.
And you are confronted with Bartho. There's nice little NPC cards that have art, which is kind of neat.
I got a job for you if you want to make some coin.
Ooh.
Is this above the book?
Oh, completely above the book. Yeah.
Okay, he says, Merry Man!
Oh!
A crit!
Time for Dave's favorite mechanic.
You return, my favorite mechanic. In D&D, you return to 1 health and a conscious. You leave the keep behind the Borderlands keep, having earned a name for yourself and the party name. You're the Troublesome 3-0 or whatever, the Threesome 3-0. It's the next day. We've come back from playing our game of the new starter set, and overall my experience as a DM, I do think it's an improvement over the previous starter sets such as Lost Mines of Fendelva and Stormwrack Isle. And the main reason I prefer it is because of the fact that it's partitioned up and it's really choose your own adventure. I do think it's a bit more gamified. However, it's more indicative of an actual campaign, and I think possibly a better starting off point. Like if people wanted to use this as a jumping platform to a campaign, it would be very easy to leave the regions that are introduced here and then just start your quest in any wider country. It's also kept very generic. There's no mention of gods or specific pantheons, even though there's a temple. So it's all, it's very clear. It was relatively easy to run, it played well, and I think it's a good launching off point for a campaign.
From the player perspective, I think that the character placemat things, I can't remember what they're called, are good. I think it lays everything out really nicely. However, it's not a character sheet. So you kind of have to learn how to build a character sheet separate from this, which I don't know, it's a bit odd because it all looks very different, but it does do a very good job of explaining what everything is and also how it works too. Playing in it was super simple as well. I didn't see any difference really from playing normal Dungeons and Dragons to playing this. If anything, it just helps the players learn what their roles mean, how to add them up. Again, pretty simple stuff, but I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I think that the scenario was really good and I think you did a really good job running it.
If you'd like to see the full playthrough of that, it will be over on Tabletop Time Roleplay and the link will be in the description. I think the episode's roughly an hour and a half of us exploring the starter set until we reach a logical conclusion, which you'll see if you watch the episode what that is. So Murray's run away working with Jazza. It's the next day and it's the outro. Thank you all for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting. Everyone says it, but it's very true for us. You're the reason we can keep making this kind of content. And this is a bit of different content, but it's something that was interesting to us. And as I mentioned, we started as a roleplay channel. So we're always going to be interested in roleplay. And I think over the last couple of years, we've kind of focused a little bit too much maybe on just making Warhammer stuff. So
It's a good change, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a bit of fun, and go check out the video on Tabletop Time Roleplay if you want. But more importantly, please go follow the Magnuscape page. That campaign's super exciting, and we hope we can do more in the world of Magnuscape in the future. So it'll be really cool to see that campaign get off the ground and do really well. But in the meantime, happy gaming.
Yeah, check out D&D for yourself if you want to get started.
Or any other of many indie RPGs. It's not the only
That's
starting
true.
point. So if D&D isn't for you, there are so many different ways. I mean, we're making a game gateway roleplay. So, it's not for everyone. One of my favorites is World of Darkness. There's heaps of games out there, but this is D&D. So, cool. Have fun. Bye.